When people talk about operating systems for serious computing, two names almost always come up alongside Windows. macOS and Linux both are powerful, both have passionate communities, and both are built on Unix-like foundations, yet they represent two very different philosophies of computing. One is a polished, tightly controlled ecosystem designed by a single company, while the other is an open, community-driven world where users can shape their systems however they want. Understanding the differences between macOS and Linux isn't just about comparing features. It's about understanding two completely different approaches to how computers should work and how much control users should have over them. macOS is the operating system created by Apple for its Mac computers. It evolved from earlier Apple systems and was heavily influenced by the Unix-based operating system, next step that Apple acquired when Steve Jobs returned to the company in the late 1990s. Because of that heritage, macOS has a strong Unix core beneath its polished graphical interface. This means it combines a user-friendly environment with powerful command line tools that developers and advanced users appreciate. However, macOS is still a proprietary system. Apple develops it internally, controls its source code, and distributes it only on Apple hardware. This tight integration between software and hardware is one of the defining characteristics of the Mac ecosystem. Linux, on the other hand, began in 1991 when Linus, a computer science student in Finland, started developing a free operating system kernel as a hobby project. Over time, programmers around the world joined the effort, and the Linux kernel became the foundation for countless operating systems known as distributions. Unlike macOS, Linux is open source, meaning anyone can view, modify, and distribute its code. This open nature has led to an enormous variety of Linux distributions, from beginner-friendly systems like Ubuntu to advanced and customizable ones like Arch Linux Engine. Instead of one company controlling everything, Linux development happens through collaboration between individuals, communities, universities, and large companies such as Red Hat, IBM, and Google. Despite their different origins, macOS and Linux share some technical similarities because they both follow Unix-like design principles. Both systems support powerful terminal environments, multi-user architecture, and strong permission systems that help maintain security and stability. Developers who work with command line tools often feel comfortable switching between macOS and Linux because many commands and utilities behave similarly. However, the similarities mostly exist under the surface. From a user perspective, the experience of using macOS versus Linux can be dramatically different. One of the most noticeable differences between macOS and Linux is the user interface philosophy. macOS focuses heavily on consistency, visual design, and ease of use. Apple invests significant effort into making the interface feel polished and intuitive. Features like the dock, Finder, Spotlight Search, Mission Control, and seamless trackpad gestures are designed to create a smooth user experience. Because Apple controls both the hardware and software, the system is optimized specifically for Mac devices. This often results in smooth performance, stable behavior, and excellent battery efficiency on laptops. Linux, by contrast, does not have a single standard interface. Instead, users can choose from many desktop environments such as GNOME, KDE, Plasma, XFCE, Cinnamon, and others. Each environment has its own style, layout, and features. This flexibility allows Linux users to customize their system extensively, but it can also be confusing for newcomers. For example, a Linux desktop running KDE Plasma might look completely different from one running GNOME, even though they are based on the same underlying operating system. Some distributions focus on simplicity and resemble macOS or Windows visually, while others prioritize minimalism and efficiency. Another major difference lies in customization. Linux is famous for giving users deep control over nearly every aspect of the system. You can change the desktop environment, window manager, system behavior, appearance, boot process, and even compile your own kernel if you want. Advanced users can tailor Linux to run on almost any type of hardware, from tiny embedded systems to powerful supercomputers. This extreme flexibility is one reason Linux dominates fields such as servers, cloud infrastructure, and scientific computing. macOS, on the other hand, intentionally limits customization. Apple designs the system to work in a specific way and encourages users to follow that design. While you can change wallpapers, install applications, and adjust some settings, you cannot fundamentally alter the operating system in the same way you can with Linux. Apple believes that restricting certain aspects of the system helps maintain stability, security, and a consistent user experience. For many users, This controlled environment is actually an advantage because it reduces complexity and prevents configuration mistakes. Hardware compatibility is another area where macOS and Linux differ significantly. macOS officially runs only on Apple hardware such as MacBooks, iMacs, and Mac Studios. Apple designs macOS specifically for these machines, which allows tight optimization between the operating system and the hardware components. This integration often results in excellent performance, smooth graphics, and reliable drivers. However, it also means users must purchase Apple devices if they want to run macOS legally. Linux has the opposite approach. Because it is open source and developed by a global community, Linux can run on a huge variety of hardware. You can install it on desktops, laptops, servers, old computers, small single-board devices like the Raspberry Pi, and even some smartphones. This versatility makes Linux especially popular among developers, system administrators, and organizations that want to repurpose older hardware instead of buying new machines. However, the wide hardware support also means compatibility can sometimes be inconsistent, particularly with newer or proprietary devices such as certain Wi-Fi cards or GPUs. Software availability is another factor people consider when choosing between macOS and Linux. macOS benefits from strong commercial software support. Many popular creative and productivity tools are designed specifically for the Mac platform. Applications such as Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, and numerous professional design programs are widely used in industries like video editing, music production, and graphic design. In addition, many cross-platform programs such as Adobe, Creative Cloud, Microsoft Office, and various development tools run smoothly on macOS. Linux, while extremely powerful, sometimes struggles with commercial software availability. Many companies prioritize Windows and macOS because they have larger consumer markets. However, Linux has a rich ecosystem of open-source applications that replace many commercial tools. Programs like LibreOffice, GIMP, Blender, and many others offer impressive capabilities. For developers and technical users, Linux often provides an even better environment than macOS because of its deep integration with open-source tools and programming frameworks. Gaming is another interesting comparison. Historically, macOS has never been a major gaming platform, mainly because most game developers focus on Windows. Apple's transition to its own Apple Silicon chips has further complicated compatibility with many existing games. While there are still games available for Mac and services like cloud gaming can help, macOS is generally not the first choice for gamers. Linux has made significant progress in gaming during the last decade, largely thanks to technologies like Proton and compatibility layers that allow Windows games to run on Linux. Platforms like Steam have invested heavily in improving Linux gaming support. Devices like the Steam Deck, which runs a Linux-based system, have also contributed to the growth of gaming on Linux. While Windows still dominates the gaming world, Linux has become a viable option for many players who want an open system. Security is another area where both macOS and Linux perform well, though their approaches differ slightly. macOS includes built-in security technologies such as system integrity protection, sandboxing, and strict application permissions. Apple also carefully controls software distribution through mechanisms like code signing and the Mac App Store. Because macOS has a smaller market share than Windows, it is also targeted less frequently by widespread malware attacks. Linux relies heavily on its permission system and open source transparency. Because the code is publicly available, developers around the world constantly review and improve it. Security vulnerabilities are often discovered and patched quickly by the community. Linux systems also tend to follow the principle of least privilege, meaning users and applications have only the permissions they absolutely need. This structure makes Linux particularly secure in server environments where reliability and stability are critical. Performance is another topic often discussed when comparing macOS and Linux. macOS generally provides very smooth performance on Apple hardware because the system is optimized specifically for those machines. Apple's recent transition to ARM-based Apple Silicon chips has improved performance and energy efficiency dramatically, allowing Mac laptops to achieve long battery life and impressive processing power. Linux performance can vary depending on the distribution and configuration, but it is often extremely efficient. Many Linux systems can run smoothly on older hardware with minimal resources. Because Linux allows users to choose lightweight desktop environments and remove unnecessary services, it can perform very well even on modest computers. This efficiency is one reason Linux is widely used in servers, data centers, and embedded devices where performance and resource usage matter more than graphical design. The development environment is another area where both operating systems shine. macOS is extremely popular among software developers, especially those working on web applications or Apple platforms like iOS and iPad. The Unix Foundation allows developers to use powerful command-line tools, while Apple's development environment Xcode provides everything needed to build apps for the Apple ecosystem. Many developers appreciate the balance macOS offers between a polished desktop interface and a powerful development environment. Linux is arguably even more influential in the development world. Many programming languages, frameworks, and server technologies are designed with Linux in mind. Developers who work with cloud infrastructure, containers, and DevOps tools often prefer Linux because it matches the environments used in production servers. Technologies like Docker, Kubernetes, and many database systems are closely associated with Linux platforms. Community support is another important difference between macOS and Linux. Apple provides official documentation, updates, and support for macOS users. Because the system is centralized under one company, updates and improvements are usually delivered in a consistent way. However, users generally rely on Apple's decisions regarding features, changes, and compatibility. Linux communities operate very differently. Because Linux is open source, large online communities contribute tutorials, forums, and documentation. Users often help each other solve problems and share knowledge. While this collaborative environment can be incredibly helpful, it also means support quality may vary depending on the distribution and community involvement. Cost is another factor worth considering. macOS itself is technically free with Apple hardware, but the hardware required to run it can be expensive. Mac computers are generally positioned as premium devices, and their prices reflect Apple's focus on design and build quality. Linux, in contrast, is usually completely free. Most distributions can be downloaded and installed without any cost. Organizations and individuals can run Linux on inexpensive hardware or older machines without licensing fees. Some companies offer enterprise Linux distributions with paid support, but the core software remains open source. The philosophy behind macOS and Linux ultimately reflects two very different visions of computing. Apple believes in creating a carefully designed, integrated experience where hardware and software work together seamlessly. The company emphasizes simplicity, design quality, and reliability, often sacrificing customization to achieve those goals. Linux represents the opposite philosophy. It emphasizes freedom, transparency, and user control, instead of a single company defining how the system should behave. Linux allows individuals and communities to experiment, modify, and build new solutions. This openness has enabled Linux to power everything from personal laptops to the majority of the world's servers and supercomputers. Choosing between macOS and Linux therefore depends largely on the user's priorities. People who value a polished interface, strong commercial software support, and seamless integration with Apple devices often prefer Mac. Creative professionals, developers targeting Apple platforms, and users who want a straightforward computing experience frequently find macOS to be an excellent choice. Linux appeals strongly to users who want control, flexibility, and open source transparency. Developers, system administrators, cybersecurity professionals, and technology enthusiasts often gravitate toward Linux because it allows them to shape the system exactly to their needs. Linux also plays a huge role in modern computing infrastructure, powering web servers, cloud services, and countless devices around the world. In many ways, macOS and Linux complement each other in the broader technology ecosystem. macOS provides a refined desktop environment that combines Unix power with user-friendly design, while Linux offers an open and adaptable platform that fuels innovation across industries. Both operating systems continue to evolve as technology changes, adopting new hardware architectures, improving security, and expanding their capabilities. As computing moves further into the era of cloud services, artificial intelligence, and mobile integration, both macOS and Linux will likely remain essential parts of the technological landscape. Their shared Unix roots give them a strong foundation, but their differing philosophies ensure that each will continue to attract different types of users. Understanding these differences helps people choose the system that best matches their workflow, values, and goals in the ever-changing world of technology.